Hey, I'm Rob from JestaThaRogue.com and I'm going to show you how to play Jamaica using the new rules from 2022. Now in this video I will be using the new rules from the second edition but using the components from our first edition. They look exactly the same. This is a game for 3 to 6 players with slightly different rules for 2 players I will cover at the end of the video. It plays in about 60 minutes, is designed by Malcolm Brath, Bruno Catala and Sebastian Pochon, and is published by GameWorks and many other publishing companies. You're a pirate sailing from Port Royal around Jamaica back to Port Royal while fighting fellow pirates to get as much gold doubloons and treasure as possible. And the captain with the highest value treasure, including a bonus for the finishing position at the end of the game, is the winner. So why not head down and click subscribe and become one of many subscribers? I'm so sorry. To start, lay out the board on the table. Shuffle the 12 treasure cards, put 9 in their space on the board and return the rest to the box. Put the combat die on the fortress in the middle of the board. Stack up the gold doubloons, food and gunpowder tokens into their own piles. The 9 skull rocks on the board are pirate layers. Put a treasure token on each one. Players take a set of cards, a matching colour ship and a personal board. Put 3 food in one hold on the player board and 3 doubloons in another one. All the ships are placed on the Port Royal space on the board. Shuffle the deck of action cards, each player draws 3. Choose a random start player to be the captain. Give them the compass marker and the 2 action dice. At the start of the turn, the captain rolls the action dice and places them on the 2 navigation boxes in any order. The dice and the order they're placed will affect the action cards played, so of course the captain should look at their cards before placing the dice. Each player selects a card from their hand by placing it face down on the discard pile. Once all players have finished doing this, the captain will flip their chosen card face up. Then they resolve their card, the morning action on the left associated with the sun icon on the left hand side die. Then the evening action on the right, associated with the moon icon and the right hand side die. Let's look at these actions, starting with the 3 that give you those precious resources. Loading. The gold doubloon, gunpowder and food tokens are to load these resources onto your ship. The die associated with that action shows how many you load. For example, if food is in the morning slot on the card and the morning die says 4, you will load 4 food onto your ship. When loading, they must always be loaded into an empty hold on your ship. If there are no empty hold, the player must discard all tokens of one hold to make room, but the discarded tokens must be of a different type from the ones being loaded. So if you're loading the 4 food onto your ship, you must discard 1 hold of gold doubloons or 1 hold of cannons in order to make room, if your holds are full. Moving. The red arrow is to move backwards and the green forwards a number of spaces on the relevant die. After each movement, both morning and evening, a player must first fight if they are on a space with another ship. Then they pay the cost of the space. This doesn't happen on an action when a ship doesn't move, for example loading new goods. For combat, the moving ship is the attacker. They pick one ship in their space to be the defender. They spend any number of gunpowder tokens and roll the combat die and add the total together. For example, if they spend 4 gunpowder tokens and roll an 8 on the die, their combat total is 12. Then the defender does the same, the player with the higher number wins, nothing happens in a tie. The winner has 3 options. Steal all contents of one hold. Take the contents from the loser and add it to their own hold, following the normal rules for loading if the holds are full. I'll get into players gaining treasure cards shortly, but instead of stealing the contents of a hold, the combat winner can steal a face up or face down treasure card from an opponent. Instead of stealing anything, you can instead give a loser in combat one of your cursed treasure cards if you have one, which are worth minus points. If a player rolls the star, they instantly win. If the attacker rolls it, the defender doesn't even roll for combat at all. They lost before it began. After combat, the active player pays for their space. If you end your movement on a pirate layer, the space is free, you don't do anything. At a port, pay the cost shown in doubloons, in this case 3 doubloons. Finally, in the sea, pay the cost shown in food, in this case 3 food. The ports are round and gold like the doubloons and the squares in the sea are square like the food tokens as a reminder. When paying costs, pay the number of resources from your holds to the bank. And what happens if you can't afford to pay? Well, you pay the shortage. First, pay as much as you have of the relevant resource and roll the combat die. On a 2 or 4, the players will go back to the nearest port. On a 6 or 8, the players will go back to the nearest sea space. On a 10, the player will go back to the nearest pirate layer. Finally, on a star, you stay still. If you're lucky enough to own newer editions of the game, the numbers are printed with the relevant symbols referring to the ports, sea spaces and pirate layers on the dice to remind you which space to move back to. And after moving back via a shortage, you won't pay the cost for the space you landed on, but you will start another fight if there is another ship there. Oh, and you can't go back past Port Royal where you started. Okay, on to treasure. If a player lands on a pirate layer with a treasure token, discard the token and draw the top treasure card. The 5 treasure cards that are actual treasure and the 3 that are cursed treasures are kept face down next to the hold. The others are kept face up and provide powers. Map. The player can now have 4 cards in hand. Sabre. The player with a sabre may re-roll their own combat die or force the opponent to re-roll theirs. Either way, the player must take the second roll. Lady Beth adds +2 to the combat die whenever that player rolls it. The 6th hold gives you a 6th hold. In turn order, everyone resolves their card. First you do the morning action, then you do any combat, then you do any paying for your space and any shortages. Then you resolve the evening action, any combat and paying for your shortages, etc. And once everyone has resolved both actions on their card, you pass the compass left and start a new round. As soon as a player passes Port Royal, they move as far as they can, but they sacrifice the evening action if they sail by it in the morning. Player passing Port Royal triggers the end of the game, and the game will end at the end of the round. Players add up their treasure. They score for their final position on the board. Port Royal and the spaces after it are worth 15 points, anything on or before the -5 is worth -5 points, and everything else is scored as shown. Each doubloon a player has in their hold is worth a point. Treasure cards are worth their value as printed, and cursed treasures are worth minus the value shown. The player with the highest total wins, with ties broken by the player who is furthest on the board at the game end. Okay, let's look at the changes for the 2-player game. Pick any ship not being used by the players. The rulebook suggests the black ship. This is now the ghost ship. Give this dummy player a hold board. Put 5 doubloons in one hold and 3 in another. Also give them the Lady Beth treasure card. This card cannot be taken from them. The ghost ship doesn't play cards, and the captain for the round will move them based on the dice values. If the pirate ship is in the lead on its own, they must move backwards. If they're behind on its own, they must move forwards. In any other position, the captain decides the direction of movement and who they attack, including themselves if they wish, and which way around forks in islands they move. The ghost ship will never pay shortages, and if they gain a treasure, it is placed face down next to the board and no player can look at it. The combat is the same, with a non-involved player taking control of the ghost ship, and they can take anything they like out of a player's holds, but if they take food or cannons, they are thrown overboard. Back to the supply. If a ghost ship loses combat, you could take one of their holds full of gold doubloons as normal, or you could take one of their treasure cards, or you can give them one of your cursed treasure cards. Of course, the ghost ship could win, and that's the 2-player rules, and that's how you play Jamaica with the 2022 updated rule set. Thanks for watching. Remember to like, share and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you know when a new video goes live. You can follow me on Threads, Insta, Twitch at JestaThaRogue, and find the blog at JestaThaRogue.com. I've been Rob, aka JestaThaRogue, and I'll see you soon.